So whether Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner lived in New York is not relevant because nobody is arguing that New York has jurisdiction to determine child custody. Instead, Sophie is currently in New York with the children, apparently, prohibited from leaving the country because of the current order in Florida, and she is arguing under the Hague Convention that the children were wrongfully removed. So let's talk about what that means. I'm Billy Tarasio, Arizona family law attorney, and this is the type of cases that I work on in Arizona. So to qualify to file a case under the Hague Convention, you have to be able to demonstrate that your child was a habitual resident of one of the convention countries and wrongfully removed or retained. So here, there's no doubt that England and the United States are both Hague Convention countries. There's also no argument that they were wrongfully removed. The argument here is that they're being wrongfully retained. The removal or the retention is wrongful if it's in violation of your custodial rights, and you were exercising those rights at the time of the removal or retention, or you would have been exercising them but for the removal or retention. So let's talk about this. I think this is a little bit problematic for Sophie because according to what she said, she knew that the children were going with Joe, and then she was going to come back to the United States and get them after she finished filming. That means when she came back to get the kids, he had already filed, I believe, which means that his keeping the kids in the United States under the filing, I don't think is going to qualify as her trying to exercise her rights, because she didn't have the rights to take them out of the United States at the time that Joe got the order in place from Florida saying that she couldn't leave the country with the kids. So in my opinion, she's got two battles here. First, she's got to prove that the kids were habitual residents of England, and I think she's got some facts that are really in her favor there. But the second part, the wrongful removal and wrongful retention, I think is going to be a little trickier. Now let's talk for a minute about defenses to the Hague Convention removal. Here it says that a court may deny the return of an abducted child if one of the following defenses applies. Number one, there's a grave risk that the child's return would expose the child to physical or psychological harm or otherwise place the child at an intolerable situation. That does not seem to be applicable here. Number two, the child objects to being returned. That is not going to be an issue. These children are 3 and 1. Number three, more than a year has passed since the wrongful removal or retention. That is also not the case here. Number four, the party seeking the return consented to or subsequently acquiesced to the child's removal or retention. I don't think that's an issue as well. Next is the return would violate the fundamental principles of human rights, not really applicable. And lastly, the party seeking the return was not actually exercising rights of custody at the time of the wrongful removal or retention, and that certainly is an issue here. As I said, I'd be very interested to see what would happen if Sophie filed a competing divorce case or a competing custody action in England, and then we're talking about which forum is the most appropriate, because nobody meets the 6-month rule. So is it more appropriate under the jurisdictional laws to hear the case in the United States or in England? And remember, none of this has to do with the best interest of the children. Absolutely not. All of this is about which court gets to hear the case. That's it. Only after we determine which court gets to hear a case can we come up with a custody plan. So again, going back to point number one, these parents should be working together to come up with a plan that works for them and their children. They have a complicated situation. They have complicated lives. You have two working parents who work internationally. There is a solution here that they can both live with, and it's probably going to be better to figure that out between them, two of them and their lawyers, than ask a court to duke it out. The longer they wait and the longer they fight about jurisdiction, the longer it's going to take to get some sort of temporary order in place. But at the same time, they have an agreement right now, as far as we can tell, for Sophie to be with the kids in New York. So what a mess. Let me know if you have other questions about this and what your thoughts are.